The biggest gift you can give your COO is the gift of time, where you say to them, do you have any other questions for me? What else would you like to ask about this project so you understand it more, right? Make it easy for them to ask you the questions. Just offering that up for them is really powerful. It does feel like we're starting to feel some of the effects of recession. We're feeling some economic slowdown, some hesitancy with some buying. And I think some of it is that we've had, government doing their job in terms of trying to keep people calm and say there's no recession. But it feels to me like we actually are in that economic recession, that companies are kind of being careful and cautious. Secondly is around interest rates. The reality is that inflation is real. Prices are going up, right? You can go to the grocery store and you can see it's absolutely real. Like everything's just way more expensive than it used to be. Like coffee, like when did we start paying $7 for a latte? But I think that we're starting to see that interest rates and inflation are absolutely real and starting to have an effect as well. I spoke with a client yesterday who had their funding companies shut down, and now they can't offer financing for all the people that were signing up for their programs, because what used to be like a 3% financing or 4% is now 9 or 10%, and their customers can't even afford to pay that kind of high interest rates on financing. So we're starting to see it in the real estate sector as well, where landlords are starting to charge more because the rates of borrowing, they can't be on the variable rate mortgages. They've all had to flip over to fixed rate mortgages. The hard part right now for many that are in Gen Y is since 2009 until last year, everything was pretty good. Like it was just going up. Like it was incredible to hear these 25-year-olds that were the smartest people in the room as investors. Well, it's easy to be a great investor when everything's just going up. I think a lot of companies are trying to become a better company. We just had the head of culture for Zappos just presented to our COO Alliance earlier today, and he did an unbelievable hour presentation. And a lot of it is around communication. A lot of it is around cultural realignment with people. But I think there definitely has to be some of those discussions. We definitely have to be very empathetic to the situation that our people are showing up with, right? Like it's probably not the right time to help them recalibrate expectations and don't buy a flat screen. It's not when we need to have that discussion. We don't have to just pay more just because life's gotten expensive too, right? There is a bit of a recalibration that has to happen. There's a chapter from my first book, Double Double, that I wrote 11 years ago, 12 years ago now, but it's still very applicable today, and it's how to grow when it's slow. So it's the lessons on how to grow during an economic downturn. I wrote it about 2 years after the 08 global financial crisis, when literally the housing market collapsed in some cities. I think Vegas was down 75%, Florida was off 70%. When a house that's worth $1 million 6 months later is selling for 350, there was a really rough road for a good couple of years. But there's some really good time-tested lessons in that chapter that might be worth revisiting with your leadership team as well, on how to grow when it's slow. Awards are really, really powerful social proof. So awards for fastest growing company, Inc. 5000, best places to work, #1 employer, best culture. Now I can talk about how to win the awards, because there's a bit of a gamification approach to how you can win some of these awards. The way that you leverage the award is not to pay the award business or to pay the magazines for more coverage. That's their game. The Inc. 5000, up until about 15 years ago, was the Inc. 500. They only gave 500. And then they're like, oh, we have a lot of upside here. We can market out of this thing. We can get people to pay for whatever to grow. Let's go to 5,000 people. Or we're only getting 500 people excited. Imagine if we got another 4,500 people excited. But for the consumer, they don't know that, right? For the consumer, they don't even know how the game is played, and they've never worked for or been involved with companies that have won these kinds of awards. What I like doing is sharing it in more of a guerrilla fashion. So creating a press release and sending that out, putting it on your website, sharing the logo on your website, sharing the link to your article on your website, sharing the link and the logo in some kind of a social post 3 times this year on Facebook, 3 times this year on Instagram, 3 times this year on LinkedIn, 3 times this year on X. And because the reality is, if you share it on Facebook, most people will forget 3 months from now that they saw your company as one of the Inc. 5000. So share it a few times on those platforms and then drive traffic to it, right? You can also email it to your entire list. You can email the story or email the link. You can give it to your employees and ask your employees to please share it on their social profiles as well. So it's all about taking that little, I call it like a log on a fire, and lighting the log on fire and then pouring gas on the fire. So the fact that you won the award is fine. Now it's what do you do with it? I would try to do stuff with it in the least cost effective or the most cost effective way. So if you read the book Free PR, it actually talks about the digital trifecta. And I think of any press story that your company gets, whether it's a blogger or a podcast that you're on or an e-zine or a magazine, like I've been in the physical print edition of Fortune, Forbes, Inc., Success, Entrepreneur, American Airlines, like in the actual magazine. Once people have read the magazine, it's kind of dead. So now it's how can I tell people I've been in the magazine? How can I get a digital reprint or an online version of it and share it? How can I get physical copies and mail it out to my customers? Because the reality is, for the most part, people either don't know or they forgot. So it's you pushing that in front of them. Even when we were in 2003, when we were on Oprah, we had about a 6-minute piece on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I didn't even watch the episode for the next 2 days. I was just like, cool, we've been on Oprah, back to work, let's keep focused. Because the reality is, it is just one thing as part of your entire sales, marketing, and PR mix. I often get contacted by companies who are like, hey, we had this grumpy negative employee who left us a bad review. What do we do? Well, why didn't you get your 50 happy employees to leave you a positive review? So then when that one grumpy negative review goes up, it doesn't even really matter anymore because all the good ones are already left. So what you want to do is go to those 33 really happy people and create a spreadsheet. And over the next 6 weeks, have 5 a week leave you a Google review, or 5 a week leave you a Yelp or an Indeed review, or 5 a week leave you a Glassdoor review. Because as you go from 100 employees to 300 employees, your Indeed reviews and your Glassdoor reviews will absolutely matter. Because when your culture is already a magnet, it's easy. But now as you scale, it's kind of like, how much energy does a satellite take to be in orbit? None, right? Once you launch the satellite, it's free. It pays dividends forever. So it'll take you a lot of work to get 33 Indeed reviews and 33 Glassdoor reviews. But once you have them, those reviews pay off for the next 5 years. And you can also use that in part of your marketing for customers. So all of these things can be levered into other things. And then here's how I run my recruiting process. I write a job posting that's very polarizing. I want everyone to read it to either love me and my company or hate me and my company. I don't want anybody in between. I'm fairly manic, I'm fairly ADD, and I swear once in a while. I don't love that I swear, but I swear. So in my job postings, I talk about being a fairly manic, massively ADD, bipolar CEO who's super obsessed with getting some really great results. And we have a work hard, play hard culture. I go, oops, there's my first F-bomb. At least I got it out of the way. Now, I've had people before email me back and say, I can't believe you swore in a job posting, delete. Or I can't believe you swore in a job posting, but at least you know you're real. Okay, you're interesting, right? And then I'll say, this will be the hardest job you're ever gonna do. If you don't already live these core values, don't bother applying, because if you break the core values, you're gonna get fired. What we want from you is to read our vivid vision and then send me a 2 to 3 minute video of how you want to help us make our vivid vision come true. And if we don't get a video back from you, we're not even going to read your resume. So now I don't have to look at the 200 resumes. I only have to look at the 9 videos. And 9 3-minute videos, I can see very quickly culturally who I like. So what I try to do is cast a very wide net and have my job postings on LinkedIn, on Glassdoor, shared on social media, kind of shared everywhere. But then we don't waste any time reading resumes of people unless we then get a video because they've read our vivid vision. So I've pushed people away. I've attracted some with a magnet. I look at the videos and then I look at the resumes, and then I bring people in for a group interview, and I'll interview multiple people at the same time over Zoom or in person or even hybrid, where we just try to get a real strong cultural feeling for them. I love any hoop that reverses the sales process. Years ago, I was hiring somebody to work in public relations for us, and one of the hoops that I made the candidate jump through was I made them go to our website and review our website and come back to us with 5 areas that we could reword, or that could be clearer, or that could be polished up. And Katie Dunsworth was the one that kind of won the job. And she came back and she's like, fix this, fix this, fix this. And she goes, I know you told me to stop with 5, but here's 18 others. I couldn't stop myself. I'm like, you're amazing. Like, you saw all these cool things. You know, she didn't write paragraphs of garbage. She communicated in the way that she wanted to, and she was so keen. And I think she got the work back to me like the next day. It feels like a lot of companies are starting to make the push back to, you need to come to an office, or you need to come to an office more often. Anyone who's a CEO or an entrepreneur is really going to work just as hard if we're at home or we're at the office. It's our life, it's everything, right? It's just like, we're gonna crank. I think if you're on a senior team, you're probably have that similar kind of makeup. You got to that level because you have that workaholic focus, you're living core values, it means something, the job matters to you. A year ago, I was definitely saying the horse has left the stable or the barn. There's no way to get the horse to come back to the barn. We are always going to be remote, fractional, off-site, whatever. It feels like there's a lot of momentum going back in the opposite direction right now. We need to have some visibility in the office. So the point with this was related to an observation that we had with our resource planning and allocation. It started with IT, and then we realized it was with marketing as well. For the most part, those are the two business areas that have projects that other business areas are starting but involve them. It's like operations has these projects they want to do and they need marketing to tie it into the whatever, and they need IT to integrate it with the whatever. Or the CEO has this cool project, but they need marketing to help out with it. But it's rare that marketing has a project that they need other business areas for. IT sometimes does when it comes to functional requirements and like something of a build, but it's usually for a smaller chunk of time. So what tends to happen is these business areas are planning out their work, right? IT is planning out for Fred. He's got 40 hours worth of work he's got to do this week. Here's 40 hours worth of project work, and Fred's going to work on his 40 hours. But then Jeffrey comes to IT with a project, and that needs Fred for 2 hours. And Nick has a project that needs IT for 2 hours. And Aaron's got an idea, and like marketing's got 3. And all of a sudden, IT's, I don't have time to do my 40 hours of work because I just got 12 more hours that are urgent from the CEO or from the CO or from wherever. So what we recognized was for IT and marketing, they're only allowed to plan out in their calendar, to block off their calendar for 5 out of every 8 hours of the day. They have to leave 3 hours of buffer time in their calendar for other work that other business areas come up with that are more urgent, unplanned, or whatever. Very similar to how a CEO should really only have 5 hours of the day blocked so that you can work on projects, you can do skip level meetings, you can sit and think, you can get out of the office. Like it's kind of like a high performance athlete. There's not a single athlete in the world that is performing their sport 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. You should have time in your calendar that's like your office hours. That's when your team can reach out to you to brainstorm or ask your ideas or whatever. You should have the standing meetings in your calendar, right? Your leadership team meeting should always be in your calendar. Your strategy meeting should always, your one-on-one meetings, and then you work everything else around it. So those are your big blocks. It's like every COO Alliance member should have the next 12 months worth of events in their calendar. We know what the dates are. Put them in your calendar. Put all your other big rocks in your calendar, and then plan all your busy work around that. But yeah, you should have at least 3 hours a day available to help them. But then your role now is to stop making the decisions for them and to start getting them to make their own decisions. So what I like doing when somebody comes to me and say, hey, what do you think about, or do you have 2 minutes? I'll be like, no, I don't, but I do have 2 minutes tomorrow during this 2-hour block. Come back to me then. Then they'll often say, well, I just need, well, what do you think we should do? I don't know. Well, then go away and think about it and come back tomorrow and tell me what you think we should do. And then give them a framework. Is it inside of your responsibilities? Is it within your scope of budget? Is it inside of our core values? Are you willing to live with the decision? Then make the decision. As long as you're making the same decision I would, make the call. So we need to sometimes get the monkey off our backs and not let them involve us in stuff. But that's by growing their skills and their confidence. The only reason why we have a customer service department or a customer service person is one of 4 reasons. Either our product sucks, our service sucks, we overset expectations with the customer, or the FAQs on the website aren't clear and robust enough for them to solve their own problem. Now, if you think about if she had 12 people in customer service at $50,000 each, if you include all the payroll taxes and management costs and computer, that's low, right? But 50 grand times 12 people, she replaced 8 of them. That's $400,000 a year in gross margin that she's saved for the next 5 years. And she probably would have gone to 24 people from 12 had she not solved the root cause. That's the stuff that CEOs and COOs need to be working on, is fixing the root problems versus putting more bandages on stuff. Most people that say they have an A-level team at best have a bunch of Bs. The difference between an A and a B is so powerful. Now you can have a whole bunch of Bs as well. You know, one of the things I know about entrepreneurs is we're wired differently than our COOs. We kind of execute now, plan later. We want the executive summary. We have tons of ideas all the time and we need to get them out of our head. It's like our head is a hard drive and it's full. So when we have 7 new ideas, we need someone to take care of them for us. We're a little bit of that perpetual motion machine. You know, we've got the good, healthy narcissism, which allows us to work through adversity. When we have our second in commands, they tend to ask a lot of questions before they start a project, which sometimes can piss us off because we think they're debating us. They're not debating you. They're merely trying to understand the rest of the project that you've probably been swirling around in your mind for 3 weeks or even a day. You handed them the project in 2 minutes and expected them to catch up. Or they come to us with all the facts and figures and all the information that they've researched. And we're glad that they've researched it, but our brain is so full, we don't want it all. So what we end up saying to them is, I don't need that. And they feel like we don't care, but we do really care. But it's like we need them to take care of that for us so that we can take care of us. So some of the secrets that I've learned is the biggest gift you can give your COO is the gift of time, where you say to them, do you have any other questions for me? What else would you like to ask about this project so you understand it more, right? Make it easy for them to ask you the questions. Or say, a lot of them also like to put a system or a playbook in place before they start the project. So just say, do you want me to take a look at the playbook? Do you want me to take a look at the system? Do you want to run through it with me to see if we've got everything covered? Do you need any help from me? Just offering that up for them is really powerful. And then for you to tell them that your hard drive is full and you like to receive things in an executive summary format. When we won the best employer in British Columbia 2 years in a row, and when we were number 2 in Canada, when the results came out, the actual wording in the magazines that talked about it said we were startlingly higher than everyone else in the survey on the area of alignment. And it was alignment with our vivid vision, right? Or what we called our painted picture. And it was that everyone in the company could see exactly what the CEO could see, right? Everyone could see what our company looked like, act like, and felt like. So they were all making decisions the same way that Brian would be making decisions. And I think that's, for me, where culture has always started, is alignment with vision. I always visualized a company like a jigsaw puzzle, and the 4 corners of the jigsaw puzzle. So that the vision was like the picture on the jigsaw puzzle box. Well, then where you start after you know what you're building, which is the vivid vision, you go to the 4 corners of the jigsaw puzzle. For me, the first corner of the jigsaw puzzle are your core values. And it's truly actually obsessing about core values. For me, your core values should be limited to 4 or 5 core values. You have to be willing to fire people if they break the core values. They should never be a single word. They should be short, easy to understand phrases that don't need any explanation whatsoever. Your leadership team and managers and frontline employees should all be able to recite the core values very clearly. Your core purpose is so foundational to why you exist as a company. People have to care about your core purpose as a company, or they shouldn't come work for you. The next one is your BHAG, and it's that big, hairy, audacious goal. Most companies don't have a BHAG. They just have a large goal. The BHAG, by definition from Jim Collins, the big, hairy, audacious goal, is it has to be a 20 or 30-year stretch that from the outside seems impossible, and from the inside seems plausible. Some examples of amazing BHAGs. Microsoft's was to put a computer on every desktop, and then they later changed that to "and in every household." Microsoft doesn't make computers. They never made computers. But their big, hairy, audacious goal was to have software that would want people to have computers, because they created the software and the disk operating system MS-DOS. Nike's BHAG back in 1972 was to crush Adidas. Inside the company, they had these entrepreneurial zealots that were like, yeah, let's do this. Apple's BHAG was to create insanely great products that challenged the status quo and change the human race. My BHAG is to replace vision statements with vivid visions worldwide. But that's culturally the 3rd corner of your jigsaw puzzle. The 4th corner is your 1-year plan. Right? What's the plan that you're working on towards your core goals of employee satisfaction, customer satisfaction, profit, and revenue? What's the plan that you've got everybody focused on? And then I talk about the 4 sides of the jigsaw puzzle. The first side are all the people systems. So that's the recruiting, interviewing, hiring, onboarding, leadership development, and offboarding of people. And then the second side is your strategic thinking. So it's being a part of mastermind communities, it's coaching, having strategy meetings. And there's no such thing as strategic planning. There's strategic thinking, and then there's business planning. They're very different. Strategy is like what if. Strategy is thinking. Strategy is talking about, like, what do we do if the market falls apart? What do we do if there's an economic recession? What do we do if there's a war? Like, I talked to the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, had the top 2 floors of World Trade Center. When the first building got hit, 95% of his employees were killed, and he was walking his kid to kindergarten. I talked to him at the TED conference 10 years later, and I said, how did your company still survive? We talked strategically about these kind of catastrophes And the next day we were able to be up and running because they had time to think about the what if scenarios. The third side of your jigsaw puzzle are all the meeting rhythms. So it's your annual planning meeting, quarterly planning meeting, financial review meetings, business area review meetings, your leadership meetings, your one-on-one coaching, it's daily huddles, it's all the systems around meetings. And then the last side of your puzzle is all your financial systems. Culture emerges from that.
So stay ahead of the curve as a COO. This next video is packed with great leadership lessons for you. It'll really help you as you continue in your growth.